Welcome to 7 Investing Now, a show that teaches you how to take a long-term view on investing by better understanding what's happening in the market now.
Good afternoon, 7 investors, and welcome to the Friday. That's right, it is Friday, and it's a holiday weekend edition of 7 Investing Now. My name is Daniel Brooks Klein. I'm the host of the program. I am being joined today by Steve Symington. Steve, we've been on a marathon. We've been doing members-only calls since 10 a.m., and we have talked a lot. How are you holding up? You got coffee? You got a Red Bull in front of you?
Yeah, I changed a tire to start the day. My mother-in-law had a flat tire, so I changed it, and then I rushed back for the call, and those are the best, aren't they? I love the subscriber calls.
They are fun, and of course, to go to those calls, you have to be a member. So if you'd like to join us at 7 Investing, it is, of course, 7investing.com/subscribe. You give us $17 a month or $170 a year, and you get our best 7 picks each month. You get the members calls, you get all sorts of access. But of course, you are here for 7 Investing Now, and we are so happy you're here. We would like your comments. We're going to talk about investing in space. That's our top story today. And this is touched off by Kathy Woods and ARK Investing. They are launching a space ETF. But Steve, investing in space has long been on our radar. How do you feel about it in a broad sense?
In a broad, open, universal sense, maybe. Space is a really interesting opportunity, and it's kind of amazing to me that we haven't talked a lot about it more in recent years, and I love it. You know, I've written old articles on the 3D printers and food and things that can be used in space, but now we have space exploration and low orbit travel becoming a possibility with companies like Virgin Galactic, and so I'm really excited about this. It's very early days. And I think the world is becoming really excited, especially as companies like Virgin Galactic and SpaceX start to make their launches and their progress more public, and we actually make tangible progress toward this actually being a real thing, specifically with the travel. But adjacent opportunities are cool too. We'll talk about those as well. But
so we're going to get into some real numbers here, but one of the things with space is I would say be careful. So yesterday, Virgin Galactic, on the news of this new ETF, which is not the space exploration ETF from ARK, has not talked about what it's going to purchase, but basically there's so little directly in this space that Virgin Galactic was up about 20% yesterday. And I say be careful, because right now, Virgin Galactic sells $180,000 18-minute pretend rides into space. I say pretend because basically you're in a low orbit, you're weightless for about 3 minutes. To me, this is like an absolute like rich guy fool kind of thing to do. But that's not really where their opportunity is. The opportunity is actually in travel. Let me give you some numbers. These all come from UBS. In theory, there could be $20 billion that in this market competing with long-term airline flights. So right now, it takes, say, 22 hours to fly from New York to Sydney. I might be overestimating or underestimating by an hour there. SpaceX can use its Starship rocket to fly about 100 people around the world in minutes. New York to Shanghai in 39 minutes, rather than the 15 hours it takes to do that by airplane. So let's look at the business opportunity there. These are UBS numbers. UBS estimates that there are more than 150 million passengers a year that fly routes longer than 10 hours. Those routes saw 527,000 people routes that on an airplane that had an average of 309 seats. Just a tiny percentage of those, if they move to the much more expensive space travel. So think of it this way, Steve. If it was $1,200 to fly New York to Shanghai and it takes you a day, or $12,000 to do it and you could be there in minutes, there's going to be a pretty significant market for the quicker flight, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of those things that I think people are underestimating. There's going to be a group of fairly wealthy people right off the bat who are willing to pay for these very expensive flights from Virgin Galactic, for example, right away, just for the pure novelty of doing so. But when it actually creates a tangible benefit for, especially, say, a business person who could save themselves a day, or someone who just doesn't want to spend that extra day but has the money and wants to maybe enjoy the supplementary novelty of a low orbit space flight. I think this could be really big. And the big opportunity is when it reaches that inflection point where the cost actually makes sense. And that's sort of the Tesla-esque model of doing things, where they start out with a very expensive roadster and they use that to fund a kind of a still kind of expensive larger vehicle, and then you eventually end up into like the Model 3, where they're getting it around $35,000. They're talking about now a $25,000 car. They're going to do something similar, is to use these really expensive flights right off the bat to help fund and create something that's more sustainable over the long term. So that's the real opportunity for companies like this in travel, at least.
Yeah, and it's important to note that space call it a near far off opportunity, because right now what Virgin Galactic is going to offer is something that's really a niche. But 10 years from now, it is believable that they'll have those $2,500 kind of around the world flights. 5% of the existing business is $20 billion. That seems to me very attainable. I know my brother, a big time sports executive, he'll fly to say, New York to Qatar, and he'll have one of those like pods where you could sleep on the plane, and those are thousands of dollars tickets, but it's worth it if he's closing multi-million-dollar deals. The money's going to be there. But Steve, the next part of this, and it's just a niche, it's going to be a $3 billion business by 2030, space tourism. I know as a kid, I assumed we'd have Moon Disney World by now, and we do not. I really want to go and be weightless and get to do all sorts of, I want to dunk over you, all the things we could do. Do you think 2030 is optimistic for space tourism?
No, I don't think that's optimistic at all. Even just last year, we had folks at Virgin Galactic saying, we want to have people on these space tours within months, not years. And we had some hiccups when it came to that last flight from Virgin Galactic, where they kind of had to successfully land after the rocket engine failed to ignite. There was a safety system that went into play, but there'll be little hiccups along the way. But I think 2030 is more than rational, and maybe even a little bit conservative when it comes to actual a $3 billion a year space tourism market. So.
We're going to be talking adjacent space plays, but Gilbrand 1218, we are not going to be talking about UFOs. I guess if there are UFOs out there and some information comes out that might change things, who knows? Maybe we're 2 years away from being part of the Star Trek Galactic Alliance.
Technically, we're talking about UFOs now, so that was a self-fulfilling question, I guess.
but it's one of those where I'm not making investing decisions, but we appreciate the spirit of the question. And of course, get your questions and comments in. You don't have to just ask us about space. We're going to be doing some interesting stuff in what we're watching. We're going to be talking some really ridiculous stories in the home stretch. So feel free to ask us questions, get your comments in. UBS expects the broader space industry, which is worth about $400 billion today, that it will double to $805 billion by 2030. We talked about travel. We talked about tourism. Eventually, there's going to be interstellar opportunities. I think anyone who's read a sci-fi book sort of knows that the future of mankind is someplace else. We don't know where that someplace else is yet. But Steve, I'm going to throw out some adjacent opportunities, and I'm going to ask you to comment on them. Most of these exist now. First one is, of course, artificial intelligence.
Sure. There's a lot as far as AI. And AI is one of those industries that's already permeating everything. But AI, as it specifically pertains to space travel, as far as assistants go, for people who are up there, that can help guide decisions, and machine learning that can help improve models and streamline efficiency. There's a lot out there when it comes to artificial intelligence and applying that to the space industry specifically, but and also data analysis and streamlining models, and I think a lot of it comes down to efficiency and the ability to improve what's there autonomously. So that'll be interesting. So
there's an awful lot of logistics in space travel and keeping it safe. And frankly, if we were sending, a colonization team to Mars, that team's going to have to sleep for some of that trip. And AI is going to help. Robotics. Obviously, this is an area. I look at robotics in the US, And aside from my vacuum, and aside from factory, obviously Amazon warehouses are using robots, grocery stores are using robots for industry, but the vast majority of the robot market is actually just kind of novelty, and that's not necessarily going to be true in space. Steve, what's the market for robots going forward in the space industry?
There, I guess you could consider, self-driving vehicles, robotics and stuff. And we all know, Elon Musk has his the verticals as far as Tesla goes with self-driving vehicles, but as space exploration becomes more of a thing, we already have robots on different planets that are around. There is an industry for that. Potentially, actually, Elon Musk just a couple of days ago said the robot future is coming. He responded to an interesting little logistics robot and sparked some interest in whether SpaceX and Tesla would be expanding into that as well. But obviously, there's a place for robotics of all different kinds, whether it means devices to handle things outside, maybe not necessarily directly related to space in the near term on a broad commercial basis. But there are several robotics companies, I think, that are worth paying attention to out there, both on the industrial side and on the commercial side. So that's very broad. And as far as space travel goes, I think commercially, maybe not so much of an opportunity to dive into for investors today, but we'll keep an eye on that.
Steve, I'm going to field the next one. It's 3D printing. So I'm bullish on 3D printing. I think we had this whole boom where everyone looked at it as investable, and then it kind of didn't play out. But here's the reality. If you're going to space and you have your machine that turns, pulls water out of the air, and that breaks, you're not going to be able to go to Home Depot to get a part. You're not going to be able to order it from Part Supply Warehouse or whatever it is. You're going to need to make it. And 3D printing allows the ability for you to just have an enormous amount of data, different blueprints, different plans, and print those items you need. And this technology already exists. So Amazon has a patent, I've talked about this many times, for a truck full of 3D printers that drives around, and when some little part in your washing machine breaks that would take 2 weeks for your guy to get, you can order that part. Maybe you'll pay $12 for it instead of the $3 it would have cost from, whoever made your washing machine, but you'll get your washing machine fixed. Multiply this to space, and you're going to have everything from, oh, hey, we need some mugs to drink our coffee in, and we need lids for those mugs because the gravity is lower here or higher or whatever it is. Anything you could think of, you're going to be able to bring with you, and your ability to make it. I think 3D printing is going to be absolutely essential to exploration, to space, and I actually think it's going to be more important than it has been in just the regular where we live now, because it's so adaptable. And I do think there will be investing opportunities here. I just don't know where those are yet. And we see your questions. We're going to take some of them after we get through this. Steve, your thoughts on 3D printing?
3D printing as far as creating parts and stuff, especially when you're in space, but also food. There was an article I wrote several years ago about 3D printable food. And it's not like, you'll be printing a steak out or something, but there are little systems out there.
Yeah, that's coming too. I mean,
yeah, there is that, and so there's interesting technology there, but also a matter of combining powders and oils and those sorts of things for sustainable food. So 3D printing is really, really interesting. Obviously, it's just still so early, and
so there's all sorts of other areas that are going to be space investable. Agriculture, we saw Matt Damon on Mars, adapting and growing potatoes. You're going to have to figure things like that out, and that's going to apply on Earth. It sounds ridiculous, but when you go through Living with the Land on Epcot, and it shows you some of the vertical growing techniques and some of the other things, a buddy of mine has a company where you can buy essentially a greenhouse to grow herbs and whatnot, like at your restaurant, or in one installation, he's putting it in a neighborhood, and the neighborhood can grow sort of things that aren't fresh there regularly. You're going to see all sorts of innovation in that space, improvements to GPS, construction and imaging. But, and I'll give you the warning, and I'll give ARC the warning, because I'm sure Kathy Woods takes my opinion very seriously. This is all really speculative. Who the winners are, who the losers are, we don't necessarily know. Just because Virgin Galactic was there first doesn't mean it's going to win. And one of the questions we had Is 7investing, and this is from Gibran again, is 7investing excited about a future SpaceX IPO? I'm not, because I don't trust Elon Musk, and I understand that Tesla wins, but the same difficult to work for CEO spread across a bunch of companies. No, I'd probably bet on Richard Branson before I would bet on Elon Musk, which I know will not be a popular opinion in the 7investing hallways. Steve, your thoughts there?
I am. I'll take the opposite side of that coin. But I also don't think we're going to see a SpaceX IPO specifically anytime in the very near future. More likely, we're going to see something like Starlink, which is another one of those adjacent opportunities as far as like satellite space-based internet access. Actually, just a couple of months ago, I believe Elon Musk tweeted something to the effect when somebody asked him if SpaceX would IPO. He said, "We'll probably IPO Starlink in a few years." But he said, the big caveat is that he wants to wait until revenue growth was more smooth and predictable. And public markets, as he pointed out in his tweet, the public market does not like erratic cash flow. I'm a huge fan of small retail investors. Will make sure they get top priority. You can hold me to that. Starlink is their satellite-based internet section of SpaceX that they would probably spin out an IPO that SpaceX could follow. But like you said, there are going to be a lot of winners, and I hold a position in Virgin Galactic as well, and I'm excited about what they're doing there. But you could also see traditional aerospace companies like Lockheed Martin and Boeing and such kind of getting involved when more companies get this as well. So, yeah.
So I have to say, I am not all that bullish on Starlink, because Starlink is solving a problem we have now. That's providing alternate internet access, or in some cases in rural areas, internet access to markets that either don't have it or only have one provider.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. I think 6G, and I'm speaking a little jokingly because we're just in the beginning days of 5G. I think there's going to be solutions for internet access that don't require launching multi-million-dollar satellites and having thousands of satellites. I think the cell phone companies, the cable, because somebody else is going to figure this out in a way that doesn't take this kind of investment. So I wonder if Starlink is essentially satellite TV. It's something that is going to be technologied out of existence before it's even a big deal. Steve, your thoughts there?
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out, but I think what Starlink and other satellite-based internet providers are trying kind of getting at, Google has, for example, some Loon is one of their projects for like balloon-based internet and stuff. They're trying to cover people who don't have it. And one of the surprising things about internet access around the world is that I'm looking at some research from Statistia that says it's only roughly 2 in 3 people. It's like 60% of the global population has access to the internet, which is bonkers. You think that leaves billions of people without access to the internet because they, it's not a matter of they just can't afford it or something. It's just that it's not there, and it's kind of stunning to think about that a significant portion of the world doesn't have the internet from a company that is as privileged as I guess we are. So I think that's what they're trying to cover is completely untouched parts of the globe. So I think there will be a market. I'm not sure I'll be particularly interested in investing in Starlink specifically as an opportunity with so much else out there, but it'll be interesting to watch nonetheless.
And Steve, it's worth noting that a lot of the world that does have internet, it's not that great, because as you know, I like to travel and I spend a fair amount of time in the Bahamas, and one of the challenges
3G and
one of the challenges is I can't really host this show unless I seek out like wired office space in whatever, and a lot of countries I could be visiting, but certainly in the Bahamas, I could probably do a podcast with audio, but doing video in a 2G, 3G world is a little bit difficult. So there is opportunities, and I actually have a satellite internet solution that I'm eager to try out the next time I'm able to travel to a place that has poor internet. We're going to take some of your questions. Lewis Carruthers says, agreed, Dan. Product market fit much more important than being first to market. I'm not betting against Musk, though. I know, and it's a bad idea to bet against Elon Musk. I can't get past the fact that he kind of seems like a jerk. And we had some questions earlier about how do you get to our subscriber-only call. So once a month, we do a new member call. We do a subscriber-only call. At that call, we update some of our picks. We take a ton of questions. It's much more intimate than here on 7investing Now, where, of course, hundreds of thousands of you are are watching. It's not hundreds of thousands, but tens of thousands of you are watching, and soon to be hundreds of thousands. So the subscriber calls are much more intermittent. You should get an email from us. If you're a subscriber and you're not getting those emails, check your spam folder or just reach out to us at info@7investing.com. We'll take a personal interest. That's one of the best things about this service is someone will solve your problem, and there's a decent chance it will be one of the 7 advisors or Sam Bailey, our director of marketing. This is not a team that farms things out. We really appreciate that. We're going to seg to what we're watching in a second, but I wanted to take a question. Roman Michael, a regular viewer, says, I'm curious if you have any thoughts about Neo. I am not a fan. I'm skeptical of Chinese companies in general, but this to me it's a momentum play that a lot of people on social media are bidding up because, hey, it's another EV company, and I don't really know the particulars of it. Steve, your thoughts here? You probably know this space better than I do.
For me, it's not. It could be a pretty decent winner. We're talking about, I think its market cap last I checked was like 90 billion or so. I'm not terribly excited about Neo. It might be worth opening a small position just to watch it. If anything else, just a little bit, but it's not really high on my conviction list at this stage. And it's possible that it could be a big winner, capitalizing on the Chinese opportunity there. But it's also worth noting, I think shares were trading lower this morning. I saw a headline because one of the company's co-founders left to take a job at Foxconn's new EV business. And maybe not a great sign that the founders are willing, one of the co-founders is willing to leave for a competitor so soon. But I don't have any strong conviction for Neo at this stage. And I'll continue to kind of passively watch it and see, but I'm not terribly excited. So
BFOFD&S says, I'm buying Starlink the day it IPOs if I can't get into the IPO itself. Hey, you don't have to agree with us. That's one of the fun things about 7 Investing is we can throw our ideas out. You can feel differently. We're happy to have that discussion. Steve, we're going to seg now to what we're watching, and something really giant happened last night, or sort of happened. Incoming President Joe Biden unveiled his stimulus program. He calls it the American Rescue Plan, or ARP for short. He probably didn't think of it that way. And it's $1.9 billion. Why don't you hit the high points, and then we'll dig into some of it.
Let's add a few zeros and call it 1.9 trillion.
Right, $1.9 trillion. 1.9 billion is how much they're spending on probably posters promoting it.
$1 billion. 1.9 trillion. That is a lot of money, and so the aim, of course, of the American Rescue Plan is to provide additional support for the U.S. economy to hold it over until the impact of the current coronavirus pandemic begins to fade. We're vaccinating 1 million people a day here, and should hold it over. But our economy has been thrashed, and we did receive, I think, the last stimulus package that went through was about $900 billion. That was itself the second. But notable things that Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion plan includes: there's a $1,400 direct payment to most Americans. This is in addition to the $600 we just got. And recall, this is just what he said he'd do. He called the last payment a down payment, and really promised more to come. There's $400 in weekly federal unemployment insurance benefits through September, or unemployment benefits through September. $350 billion for state and local assistance, $130 billion aimed toward reopening schools, $50 billion for COVID testing, $20 billion for national vaccines. He's making the child tax credit fully refundable temporarily, increased to $3,000 per kid or $3,600 for children under 6. But one of the things to really note at this point is that this isn't a given that they will push the proposal through as it stands. Most legislation requires 60 votes in the Senate. Once Biden takes office, they're going to be controlling 50 seats, and they're going to need some support from the Republicans here. And there are some pieces that are going to make them push back. There's a provision that would increase the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour, and you're going to get some pushback on that. And we also have to keep in mind there's another spending package likely next month that's going to focus on jobs and infrastructure to support clean energy. And so there's a lot of money being spent here, and some members of Congress are hesitant to spend it on that scale, but they are pushing for bipartisan support. So I suspect the package as we see it today will not go through. They are going to kind of find a middle ground somewhere in that.
So I see a lot of comments both here and other places on like, what is this going to mean for the market? And there's a lot of the stimulus money going to go into the market. And I think that's not looking at it correctly. A healthy economy requires people who live in the country to be healthy. So things like programs that keep people from being evicted, programs that push off having to pay back student loans while you're unemployed, programs that are giving people who need it directly money, that are keeping small businesses afloat. So really what's good for the market is the floor for the economy. And the challenge here is, look, I am not in favor of $1,400 payments to people who are working. I don't need a $1,400 payment. I've always thought it's been a bit bizarre that we know who's working and who isn't working. We know who's been impacted by the pandemic, why we haven't made this more targeted. And I do think you're going to see some pushback there. But Steve, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the $15 minimum wage. And I'll take the controversial stand here. I think a blanket $15 minimum wage is a problem. I think in some markets, that's not a living wage. I think some jobs, and I used to run a toy store, the guy who came in and worked 4 hours a week for me because he loved baseball cards was getting paid $8 an hour, and that was just fine. That wasn't his job. I think there needs to be some exceptions here, and you talk about it from a restaurant point of view. This is going to take tip jobs and make them $15 minimums. The restaurant, do they raise prices and tell you we raised prices by 10%? We're now paying this person this much, adjust your tips accordingly. It gets very, very tricky. And I do think that this should be done on a different basis. I would set a floor for living wage in a market, meaning what does it cost to rent if you're married with a kid, what does it cost to rent a 2-bedroom apartment and eat and pay the utilities? If I'm below that, then I qualify for federal assistance. And if the company I work for is profitable, they should have to pay my benefits. I think that works a lot better than sort of setting these arbitrary numbers, because $15 an hour in Montana is probably worth a lot more than $15 an hour here in West Palm Beach. So trying not to be political, trying to just be practical. That in some cases it's too much, in some cases it's not enough. For some jobs, it's not correct. Steve, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a hard topic to take, and I think that's why you're getting the pushback, is those arguments exactly. So I don't I know a lot of small business owners who vehemently disagree that they should be required to pay a minimum wage of $15 an hour, but personally, I'll let them make those decisions and see how it plays out. But I suspect that's going to be one of the provisions that gets removed from this particular stimulus package. As far as
I would agree with that, and I do think the goal here is a bipartisan bill. So I think you're going to see the broad strokes of this, and then you are going to see some nuance. I do think you'll see action on wages, just probably not as part of this deal. And JE says what it means for the market short term, who knows? Long term, nothing. I don't think it's nothing, because I do think if you see something like a minimum wage change, well, that is going to change the dynamics for Papa John's and Domino's and companies that aren't paying that $15 an hour. So you are going to see long-term impact, but I agree, for most companies, for most stocks, it is not going to matter. And this is something we're going to touch upon this a lot, because there's going to be a lot of political back and forth on what changes, what doesn't. There's going to be, some tax reform, but I keep saying this. It is really important to remember it's 50-50, meaning the Democrats can slightly control the Senate, and it's very close in the House. Major things are not going to happen if they're not bipartisan. So I actually think maybe as a country, we're turning a corner towards being forced to work together, and that's always been a good thing. And I think that's going to be good for everybody involved. What we're watching, and I'm going to be quick on this, and Steve, feel free to, as I'm talking, key up some comments that you'd like to share, or some questions you'd like to answer, because they're coming in fast and furious, and I can't keep up. But here's how the holiday season went. It followed pretty much exactly the patterns I told you it would. Spending started earlier. The haves won. So the Targets, Amazon, Best Buy, Walmart, those were the winners. Dick's Sporting Goods, we don't have results from all of these, but we do have Target results. Target had a blockbuster holiday. Digital sales were up 102%. That's just absurd to think about. But store comps, in-store sales, were also up 4.2% in November and December. Walmart was up 5% in November. They haven't shared the December numbers. I'm not selectively picking which numbers we use here. Amazon hasn't released any numbers, but has already claimed a record holiday season. But the struggling companies, there's not going to be a respite here. Macy's hasn't reported Q4 sales, but we're trending 20% down. Urban Outfitters dropped by 8.4%. Destination XL, that's shirts for us larger guys. Steve, you and I larger in different directions. Unfortunately, you're taller. I'm sadly broader. Their sales were off 23.9%.
Wow.
But here's one that surprises me. Steve, I'm going to let you say this. And Sam, if you could share the graphic after Steve votes. Steve, where do you think mall traffic was in December compared to 2019? What percentage down do you think it was?
What do I think? Without looking or Googling.
And this, let me clarify. This is top tier malls. This isn't your Artie's. This is like your Simon Property Group, your Brookfield, your better malls.
Without looking at anything, I would have thought they'd be flat to down like 5%. That was kind of my thought. Like I saw a fair number of people, but go ahead.
Sam, you want to share the graphic? We did a poll on this. So most of you thought it was 40% or more, 66.7%. It was actually down about 10%. Numbers have been way up and down for malls based on the pandemic. There were points where sales were down that much, but in December, people basically felt they had to go to the mall. They'd done the shopping they could. And it's also worth noting that mall traffic in February was higher than at any point it was in 2019. So this narrative that people aren't going to the mall, it's just not true. Now, what's happening at the mall? People aren't buying as much. And especially with the pandemic, you might have previously gone to the mall and you go get a pretzel, you go to the food court, then you browse in every store you ever might shop in. Now, that's not what's happening. You go to the mall and you need to get your wife a gift. So you go to the Apple store, you go to Pandora, you go to the jewelry store, you go to Starbucks, whatever it is your wife wants, you go to that store. Maybe you go one place for yourself, you go to GameStop and buy a game for yourself, and then you leave the mall. So we are seeing changing habits, but this bodes well for a post-pandemic world where absolutely I think malls, the top malls, are going to attract customers, but there are going to be some stores. Look, does Dillard survive this? Probably not. Does Macy's turn the corner? I don't know about that. Steve, before we hit the home stretch, do you have any questions or comments you wanted to share?
No, not so much around retail sales. I'll say my family probably contributed 5% of Target's outperformance right there, but we were there constantly, and Amazon packages. I mean, it's no surprise that they're thriving through all of this. So some of those bigger, strong retailers getting stronger, and that's really what we expected.
I essentially live in the Target parking lot. Many of my neighbors have a Target view. I'm 0.4 of a mile from a Target. When we finish this, I'm going to be walking to Target to go to Starbucks to get some coffee. So those companies, and it's not about the pandemic. It's about execution. Best Buy executed incredibly well. When you couldn't go in their stores, they found ways to do curbside pickup. They found good things to do. J.E., I appreciate the comment. It's more of you, and more of you is good. We're stretched thin as a team today. Matt Cochran is dealing with a family emergency. We had 2 other calls. So usually the Friday show is like 4 or 5 of us. Today it is just Steve and I, but we're going to do something ridiculous for the home stretch here. This is one, as I spend a lot of my time looking for stories for this show, and I just found a lot of stories that I went, really? Like, that's a thing? So for the home stretch, we're going to start with, Steve, Costco is shutting down all of its photo centers. When is the last time you took a photo on film?
A long time ago, but they also do the digital photos, and I remember seeing our photo center disappear, and I was a little sad because we used it a lot for their prints, but we order, they're still going to, print photos and everything, but we got our daughter got a Polaroid from one of her grandmas actually for Christmas, and she's very excited about that. So retro coming back, but film cameras are,
So, and this is odd to shut down on Valentine's Day, but as of Valentine's Day, here's what Costco's not going to offer: ink refills, the ability to take passport photos, photo restoration, and a service that transferred home videos from VHS to DVD or USB. These are all services that exist online. There's still a market for these things. Costco should not be taking physical space. And this is a positive for Costco. This is Costco saying these are dying industries. Let's use this space for something else. But Steve, I'm not a fan, but my former colleague and good friend Emily Flippin, we did multiple shows where we talked about the Taco Bell menu changes. And there was a point where Emily was crestfallen that they were getting rid of the Mexican pizza. And I asked her the question, I'm like, well, they still have all those ingredients. Could you just order something else, but just like specify the ingredients in a way so you basically get the Mexican pizza? But what you could not get was the Taco Bell potato. But that's not going to be true soon. Steve, have you ever had a Taco Bell potato? I have no idea what this is.
Yeah, I mean, I love their like fries and everything, but yeah, I love everything from Taco Bell. I could eat there every day if it didn't make me feel horrible about myself, but I love Taco Bell so much.
So last year when they slimmed down their menu, they got rid of cheesy Fiesta potatoes and the spicy potato soft taco. This actually didn't meet well with vegetarians because this took away a vegetarian option, but those things are coming back. And I bring this story up because I think you're going to see a return to more normal menus. So one of the things that happened in the pandemic is a lot of companies slimmed down their menus. A lot of food providers said, okay, let's not that many people order the pork sandwich. Not that many people get a side of potato wedges. Let's get rid of those things for now. The big one, and I'll ask you, Steve, McDonald's got rid of all-day breakfast. And they got rid of all-day breakfast because the franchisees don't like it. It's a little bit tricky to make a sausage patty next to a burger. Yeah. And to me, I'm not really a customer. I don't go to McDonald's that often, but if I ever did, it would be for all day breakfast. It's horrifying that they're putting the need of their franchisee over the need of their customer. That seems kind of not how you should run a business.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of a fine line to watch. But if you have your franchisees revolting, you're going to have subpar service, and that was the trouble I think with McDonald's to begin with when they implemented all day breakfast. It was very difficult because they're working with limited space, and you had to have separate grills, and that was tough. But yeah, you do need to keep your employees, and in the case of it, McDonald's, your franchisees happy. And I think it was probably the right move. It might cost them. It might cost them some sales, though, and that's something to keep in mind.
I get it during the pandemic. I don't see how you don't reverse it. I want a McGriddle, and I want a McGriddle now. And actually, I would love a McGriddle now if anyone wants to bring by a McGriddle. It's CES right now. This might be the least we've ever talked about CES during CES season, but Toto, a company that makes high-end toilets, they've debuted a health analyzing toilet. So, Steve, here's what the toilet does. You use the toilet for the things you use a toilet for, and at the tin tells you, hey, Steve, maybe you need a little more vitamin C. Ooh, you're a little bit dehydrated. Is this something you want from your toilet, Steve, forgetting the fact that a toilet normally costs like $200 and this costs like thousands of dollars? Is this something you'd want your toilet to do?
No. It's just so weird to me. I mean, it's literally analyzing what you propel from your body to tell you about it. But hey, there might be a market for it, and maybe it'll be a thing 20 years from now, and we'll wonder how we ever lived without it. But this isn't something like, where have you been all my life? Like, that's just no.
I feel like it's a good idea that no one would want. I don't want my relationship with my toilet to be a dialogue. Like that feels like it should really be a one-way relationship. J.E. says, I stopped going to McDonald's when they stopped the all-day breakfast. I agree. You do what your customers want. And if I want a McFlurry at 8 a.m. or a sausage McMuffin at 10 at night, I think they should fill those needs. We know they have it inside. Just get the stuff out. It's not that difficult. Yeah. Steve, there's one more here we're going to share. We skipped a couple, but we're running a little bit long. Am I finally going to get a flying car? I was a kid in the 80s. I saw the Jetsons, and not only did George Jetson have a flying car, it folded up into a briefcase. Am I getting a flying car soon? Is 7investing going to be?
No, not exactly. So GM actually rallied earlier this week. You might have noticed when they unveiled an electric van and a flying car prototype. They said they've actually designed both vehicles, but what they showed off to investors and what they showed off to people that saw their presentation was a simulated computer render. But they do say they've designed both vehicles, and it's really interesting because it's a single passenger prototype that would basically be for high density urban environments. So you could fly from rooftop to rooftop or something. So you hop in, it's almost like, stepping on a drone. So really, really interesting. And you think, well, how niche is that? But Morgan Stanley actually stepped out and asserted that the quote unquote autonomous urban aircraft industry could be worth 1.5 trillion by the year 2040. So, we're talking about something that's almost 2 decades away. But it's a possibility. And I think it's something that would be interesting, but
let me jump in here. It could be, but it won't be. Have you ever seen?
It's terrifying. Like, think of the crashes and things that would happen like that. I'm sure they'd have a parachute or something built in, but
people get hurt on scooters. You're not. First of all, they look like it looks like a stand-up version of a Star Wars speeder bike. This is not going to be how you get from your office to the Starbucks in Manhattan. This is never going to happen. We talk a lot about autonomous vehicles, and I'm of the belief that autonomous vehicles are going to happen in closed-loop systems first. So they're going to happen on college campuses, Disney World, maybe New York City closes to car traffic and becomes autonomous vehicles only. I think we're years away from that. The idea that we're going to let, Joe office worker strap on his helmet and go take a flying car, it absolutely, this is not going to happen. We thank so many of you for watching us today, for bearing with us over, for some of you, 3 hours. For those of you here at 7 Investing Now, we are off on Monday, and Wednesday is Inauguration Day. So we're going to go at 11 o'clock on Wednesday because we don't want our audience taking away from the inauguration. And of course, we know you choose to watch us over anything else. We also know that's not true at all. And it's the inauguration and all sorts of terrible things might happen. So of course, we're going to be on at 11 and we're going to do a quicker than normal show. We'll get you out of there by 11:30, 11:35. Sam Bailey, it is now time to hit our finisher. If you could please share the graphic. I forgot to put it in my script. What percentage of retail shopping will be online in 2023? 5.2% of you said less than 20%. 25.3% said 20 to 30%. 30 to 40 said 29.2%. And 40.2% said 50% or more. That's 2 years from now. Steve, do you know what percentage of shopping was digital, retail shopping was digital during the absolute height of the pandemic? Take a guess at it.
I would guess 19%.
That is pretty much accurate. It's always better if you say something that's wrong.
Yeah.
And so 40% is preposterous. In 2023, we will probably be somewhere in the low 20s. We may not even get there because here's the reality. I like shopping in stores. People like shopping in stores. As convenient as it is to get groceries delivered, you know what's also convenient? Seeing your meat and your produce before you get it. Now, those things can improve, and things like digital tailors and better measuring, that is going to help some traditional clothing sale go online, but I don't care how great it gets. Like, you can use that tool that shows what the Peloton will look like in your living room. That's not the same when you're trying on a suit. So if you tell me it gets to 30% in 2025 and that's the max, maybe that could happen. But I think it's going to be a lot like digital books, where everyone assumed digital books were going to end physical books, and it actually topped out at about 50-50, and it stayed 50-50 for a really long time. My wife has a Kindle. She is loath to use it. She is much more likely to just read a traditional book, whereas I don't even use my Kindle anymore. I read on my phone. Those are preferences, and the same with shopping. I use all those services. Heck, I've got a Goldbelly order from Arthur Bryant on its way today. So Kansas City barbecue coming towards me today. That's going to replace a shopping trip, but it's not going to change how I fundamentally shop. Steve, any thoughts here?
I think one of the things that we should really keep in mind is that how low e-commerce penetration still is, and that how high it goes in the next decade or so remains to be seen. But I think that also helps answer the question of a lot of people who are skeptical. How much bigger can Amazon get? How much bigger can these companies become who are focusing e-commerce leaders? How much more market share can they take? A lot is the answer. So they can get a lot larger because e-commerce still represents a fraction of overall retail sales, and there's a lot of room to run there. But I also don't think we're going to be hitting 100% anytime in the near future. There's still a huge chunk of retail sales that happens offline, and I think people tend to overestimate that. So it's something to keep in mind as e-commerce continues to grow.
If you want to tell me the hybrid number grows significantly, Amazon's biggest growth ahead of it might be brick and mortar. Adding thousands of physical grocery stores might add more dollars to Amazon's bottom line than they grow in terms of e-commerce. And there's just a lot of stuff you like to see. And I think that's going to continue. So we're not going to see the end of stores. We're going to see the end of badly run stores. We talked about it before. I'd worry if I was Dillard's or Macy's or Destination XL. I would not worried if I was Five Below or Ollie's or TJ Maxx or any of these really well-run retail companies. With that, it's Friday. It is a football weekend. Very excited. Steve, as we close out the show, I'm just going to ask one question, a sports-related question. Sure. Were you shocked the Jets hired someone that wasn't a terrible choice? Like, I had joked on Twitter that after the Jags hired Urban Meyer, that the Jets were going to hire a Twitter parody account, Suburban Meyer, but they hired Robert Saleh, who was one of the top picks. Were you shocked here?
I was surprised. That was unusual. Yes, I'll say I was shocked.
Yeah, I thought the Jets maybe would rehire Rich Kotite, maybe bring back the ghost of Weeb Eubank. Anyway, I'm teasing all of my Jets fans. We thank you for watching. We will not be back Monday. We will see you Wednesday, an hour earlier at 11 a.m. Thank you for watching.